start the recording in just a moment, but I would just like you to notice the deportment of Professor Jengjalern, whom I met uh, together with my wife in a camp many years ago. Dr. Prisha and Dr. Anchel, both of them professors. Anjali is a professor of economics. Is that right, Dr. Prisha? Economics? And for you, it's more to do with political science, isn't it?
Yes, political science and public administration.
Yes, public administration. So if you go into the server, you will find a capsule entitled Public Administration. And I would imagine that covers governance,
Yes,
that
yes.
covers policy, that covers a lot of things. What exactly does public administration cover, Dr. Prisha?
Well, a wide range of topics, like you said, public policy, human resources management, and communications, and public administration and democracy, law and public administration, this sort of thing.
Fantastic. And so what we're going to do is now, Dr. Prisha, are you in your home? Is this your
Yes,
home?
yes, I am.
Okay. So because we see a lot of books, is that your bookshelf at the back there?
Yes, yes, that's mine. A little messy though.
A little messy. Okay. But nevertheless, um, what we'd like to do now, you will be the mystery personality number 3, and in fact the last one for this conference. Okay. And this section is 10 minutes. It's kind of freestyle to talk
All right.
about your modality without mentioning too much, so that the learners will be able to come to their own conclusion. 10 minutes, and then perhaps after that we can have a chat a little bit
Okay.
more.
That's fine. Yes, that's fine.
All right. Would you like to sit a little bit closer to the microphone so that we can get a better audio on that?
How about
Fantastic.
you?
But we hear
Is it
you
okay
clearly.
now?
Yes,
All right.
good.
Well, I like to bring greetings to all of you from Chiang Mai, the city in the northern part of Thailand, which is now a little bit more relaxing in terms of the pandemic. That means we can go to shops and to certain places, to restaurant, and a lot of people are start to come into the city right now. See, as Pastor Gerard Seal mentioned, that our relationship dated back many years ago, probably around the early 90s. So when he asked me to join the modalities course or curriculum, I am very enthusiastic. I'm very pleased and really delighted to do so. So after saying yes, he sent me a lot of materials, mostly in the digital format, which forced me to unlearn and relearn many things technology-wise. So as he mentioned earlier, that perhaps the second half, which I consider myself one of them, would have some kind of technological problem, but still being able to learn. So I would consider myself a low-tech guy. I worry too much about the equipment, and I tried it one time, it didn't connect. That even made me more nervous And I also consider myself a late comer in the modalities industry, which can be an issue sometimes. This afternoon, issues of communication, meaning that I probably don't understand what you're talking about, and you may not understand what I'm talking about. But my talk today would be divided into three parts. The first one is to tell about myself, to tell you who I am. So I would prefer to tell you who I am more than to tell you what I do or what I am. And the second part would be an interview with Pastor Gerard Seal, just to know me a little bit better in depth. And also the third part would be in Q&A time, and you all would guess and tell me which modality would fit or describe me the most. So I like to tell you about my life into three parts: the early childhood, the working life, and the after retirement life. I grew up in the countryside of Thailand, about 200 kilometers north of Bangkok. I was raised by three grandmas most of the time, because my father was a businessman. He was a rice trader, bought rice from a farmer and took it to Bangkok in a large quantity to different rice exporters. And then he had to travel back and forth from my hometown to Bangkok a lot. And many times my mom had to accompany him for the trip. So I was left with the grandma. My grandma had two sisters. So I call all of them grandma. So I have three grandmas. Each grandma had her own family and children. So I have a lot of uncles and aunties. And I think all of them are competing to get a love from me, because I was the only small child in their home. Sometimes I feel even closer to my grandma than to my own parents. But anyway, I was kind of spoiled at that time. And my grandma, three of them were Buddhist. So I grew up in a strong Buddhist environment and influence. See, at a very early age, young age, I had a dream to be, an important person. People usually ask children that what do you want to be when you grow up? Something like that. I would say that I would like to be the governor of the province, because the man seems to be very, very influential, very well respected, and very famous, and always a center of attraction. So I said, I want to be a governor of the province one day. They all laughed, of course, but they blessed me that my wish would come true. One day I asked my father what I should study to become a governor. He said, you have to study either law or political science, but you have to join the Ministry of Interior at a very young age. And just 3 or 4 years before you reach 60, you can become a governor if you're lucky enough. He said that just to warn me that the road to the governorship is not that rosy. You have to work hard and you have to study hard. So after I finished high school, I took an entrance examination to study political science at Chulalongkorn University and studied there for 4 years. During that time, I met a girl who was studying public finance at that time and fell in love with her. And later on, we got married. So if you ask me to describe myself, I would say that I am a husband of one wife with two children right now, and my children are grown up, and my daughter is 45, and my son is 41 years old right now. They are both medical doctors, and my daughter is already married and has her own family and has one child, one son. So I have my grandson. So you can call me grandpa already right now. So let's get back to the first dream, to become a governor of the province. After graduating in political science, I was preparing myself to take what they call the entrance examination for the civil servant. We all have to take the test and the examination. So I prepare myself for that exam. And while I was preparing to take the exam to work with the Ministry of Interior, there was an announcement of scholarship to go to the US to study political science. I said to myself, wow, this is a great opportunity. Maybe I can, become a governor even at a younger age if I have a master's degree. So my dream shattered because in order to get the scholarship, I had to sign a contract with the office called the National Research Council in Bangkok, so that upon my return to Thailand, I would have to work for them, double of the time that I spent in the US for the study. So now I have to choose between joining the Ministry of Interior or joining the National Research Council, which is very academic organization. But anyway, the idea of going to study abroad is very exciting at that time. So I chose the second option. And a year later, my girlfriend followed me to the US also to study her economics. And before we returned to Thailand, we got married in Fort Worth, Texas, and returned to Bangkok and worked with National Research Council. You see that to me, it seems there is an invisible hand, a guiding hand over my life since my graduation from political science. And life is not easy in Bangkok. It was so busy and hard for the young couple. Traffic, work schedule, taking children to school, picking them up, and these type of things. Plus, the cost of living in Bangkok was very high comparing to our income. But anyway, there are good things happened during that time of working in Bangkok. While I was working at the NRCT, or National Research Council, the Lord found both of us there by sending one professor from the nearby university to head one of the research projects. And I had to work with this professor as an assistant project director. This professor is a Christian. After an intense witnessing for more than 2 years, my wife and I received the Lord in 1979, December 1979. And the next year, 1980, on the Easter Sunday, we were baptized at the same time. I forgot about the first dream already. So I was thinking about moving up to Chiang Mai, because Chiang Mai is very attractive place to live. And while I was contemplating of changing the job, a friend of mine from Chiang Mai University came to visit us in the office and asked if we would like to join Chiang Mai University, because there are 2 vacant positions. And we already say yes, almost right away. You see that right after baptismal service, 2 or 3 months after that, we moved to Chiang Mai, and pastor in Bangkok traveled to Chiang Mai with me and asked one Christian family to take care of us spiritually, because we are very new believer in Christ. This couple was elders at Lana Thai Church. So we then became the new members of Lana Thai Church. After about 2 years of working with Chiang Mai University, we we thought that teaching in the university without PhD limits us in many ways, such as research grants always given to the PhD holders, and also without PhD you cannot teach in certain graduate programs. So we made a second decision, another big decision, to go back to study in the US for our PhD, and this time with a lot of prayers and support from fellow believers. You know that Christians love to pray for one another, no matter what happened. So we decided to go to the US. I landed in Syracuse, New York, and spent 6 years to study for a PhD in public administration. And my wife studied resource economics at what they call the State University of New York, the Environmental Science and Forestry campus. And the two campuses were next to each other. So we can use the same shuttle bus, using the same library. Children can go to the school nearby. Seems like there are some, influence over our decision that we didn't plan to. These 6 years in Syracuse have formed my spiritual life, and the church in Syracuse, which is called the International Assembly, who worked among international students, discipled us and train us and equip us. And in their ideas is they want to send us back to Thailand as a missionary couple. So we will be the first missionary couple that doesn't require any financial support from the home church, doesn't need to relearn the culture, and doesn't need to learn new languages. Which means that soon after we landed in Thailand, we can start working right away. So when we got back to Thailand, I worked with the Department of Public Administration, Chiang Mai University. And because of the PhD holder, they gave a lot of opportunities. I had a wider opportunities to do many things. So we have done many consulting works to the government and to the private sector. At the same time, we also serve in the church as an elder of Lana Thai Church. You see, I serve as an elder of the church while teaching at the university at the same time for about 12 years. And then the pastor of Lana Thai Church passed away, and I became a pastor of Lana Thai Church for about 1 year. And after that, we came out of the church and started a new church called Rachamanka, Sandisuk Rachamanka Church. And I'm still pastoring this church until today. See that, as I said earlier about the invisible hand, invisible guiding hand over my life, I wanted to become a governor. Instead, I become a university professor and a pastor. One time I was asked during the lunch meeting of the political science alumni of Chulalongkorn University, comprising of many retired governors. And one of them asked me if I ever felt sorry not to choose to work with the Ministry of Interior and pursue my first dream. I told them that if I could have go back and make decision again, I would make the same decision. I have never felt any sorry. Actually, I forgot already about the dream of becoming a governor of the province. Now, after that, I retired from Chiang Mai University in 2007. And just to give you a little bit overview of my life after retirement, I felt so free. I can choose to do whatever I want to do. I can choose to teach or not to teach, and when to teach. And now I can devote my time to the work of the Lord much more than before. And to help you get a better understanding of how Christianity in Thailand is managed, particularly for the Protestant churches, we have three umbrella organizations, namely the Evangelical Fellowship of Thailand, the CCT, the Church of Christ in Thailand, and the Baptist Convention. Members of the Church of Christ in Thailand are mostly Presbyterian. And of course, members of Baptist Convention, as the name suggests, are mostly Baptist. The rest of the churches, Protestant churches, would form themselves and register under the Evangelical Fellowship of Thailand. After retirement, I worked with the Northern Committee of the Evangelical Fellowship of Thailand for many years. And in 2010, I was elected as chairman of the Evangelical Fellowship of Thailand, overseeing member churches all over the country. I served in that position for 2 years until 2012. You can see that, the road that I'm traveling right now is not the one that originally chosen. And along this road, I feel the touch of this invisible guiding hand all the time. Even though some parts of the road are rough and rocky, I feel peace beyond understanding. And I'm sure that the destination where this road takes me will be much better than the road that I wanted to choose in my first dream. So thank you very much. I hope that I can tell you something about myself, and I would give back the time to Pastor Jerry.
Yes.
Anything?
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Prisha. What an incredible sort of a summary or a cameo of so many clues that we received there, beginning with the first observation that you made, Dr. Prisha, that I was trying to communicate in so many different ways to you through the electronic means, and it took you some time to decode, or rather to come to this. And I thought that was quite interesting as well, because in many ways, those that have this similar modality may be a little bit slower to catch on to something, but then, I mean, it's not as though you're necessarily an early adopter of new things, but once you catch on to it, you really, obviously, the example that you gave of coming to Christ, and in each case, whether it was coming to Christ after 2 years of intensive evangelizing,
That's right.
it's not easy for you to adopt new things, I can see. And then only after 3 years of being in Chiang Mai University, then you decided to go to Lanatai and so on and so forth. But eventually became the pastor for a while, a season, of that same church. So it may take you a little bit more time to really analyze and break it all down and think through it very carefully and make sure that the evidence is there, and then you chose a path. You chose a path that was different from those that those of your colleagues, many of whom had fulfilled that dream of most political scientists who were in the civil service of becoming a high-ranking civil servant. But your path that you chose was very different, that took you and Dr. Anchal into a an experience of far greater than anything you had experienced up to this time. From young, you mentioned being the darling of your uncles and your aunties. Were you this analytical? Were you always very organized in your thinking processes? Were you very careful before you made decisions? Were you? What about when you fell in love with Anjali? Did you think a lot about that, or was that just love at first sight, or was there a mental, deliberate, intentional decision to fall in love, or did you just fall in love? How was your mental process?
Well, it's very difficult to explain, but anyway, I kind of liked her when I first met her, and we have
Just liked her.
we have been going study for perhaps 6 or 7 years before decided to get married. We were married in Texas, in Fort Worth, Texas.
Mhm.
At that time, Anjali was studying for her master degrees in economics at Texas Christian University.
Right. So generally speaking, you are very, very, you before you make a decision, can you tell us what are the processes that you go through and you think through?
Well, I think we were friends, study at the same university. Sometimes we were classmates also, and we understand each other very well. And her friends are also my friends. And my friends are also her friends. We have a lot of mutual friends, and so environment support a lot of this decision. I asked my father, and she asked her father at that time. They will say, yes, it's up to you. If you think that you make the right decision, just go for it. And so it just happened like that.
Right. Okay. Generally, let me explain. When I was in Chiang Mai, and the first time I met
Okay.
Dr. Prisha in the mountain retreat of Doi Satep, I do remember.
Yes.
Just the conversation that we had, and it was like he was a wealth of knowledge about Thai culture, about any question that I had about Thailand. He could answer it in such a clear and succinct way that I didn't have to ask again the same question. The vocabulary, the articulation of thought was extremely systematic, I would say. And therefore, I could go on to the next question. And then I found myself going to the next question and the next question. And therefore, lots and lots of time. Of course, we didn't have anything else to do up there, but nevertheless, it was an enjoyable learning experience, I felt, speaking to someone so knowledgeable and so rich in terms of understanding that immediately I felt, I saw myself in a teacher-student kind of a situation where I was literally all ears. And So that was really amazing. I felt was so worthwhile just to spend an hour or two or three with you rather than reading a book or something like that. It was so vivid. And subsequently, I was very surprised when you hosted me a couple of years back and introduced me to some of your friends who were very wild. I mean, they had occupations that were way outside my field of understanding, my horizons. You introduced me to a colonel in the Thai border police, and the way we rode in the car and the jeep, and he had all the weapons in the back. And we were able to fire off all these firearms that had been confiscated from drug lords and all this. A stark contrast between the Dr. Prisha and then his friends were all very all students of Dr. Prisha, all very, very appreciative. Every student that I met, spoke so highly of you and the knowledge base, the encyclopedic knowledge, and just the repository of wisdom and practical too. And
By the way, you know that Colonel Songkiat, the border police,
yes,
later on he became what we call the narcotic suppression board or something. But he was promoted to be a major general before retirement. Now he's already retired and live in Chiang Mai.
a major general. Wow.
Yes. You know the children, the son who went to be with you in Singapore for some time,
Yes.
crying because of homesick. That one is already a lawyer and a police officer right now.
Oh my
With the law
goodness.
degree. Yes. So see how long ago that.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. Yeah, 15 years perhaps, or 10 years ago. But now he's a lawyer. Amazing. Okay, so over to you, Nizal, and just give us for one last time the mechanics, exactly one more time what they need to do as they give their answers.